It's story time with Sterling. In studio today, we have Sterling. How are you today?
I'm good.
Wonderful, wonderful. What are we going to talk about today on Storytime?
I thought we would look at the first school in Newberry and how it transitioned into the property where it is now.
Good. Tell us all about it.
Okay. The first school in Newberry was on East John Street. And unfortunately, there was no photos. Unless there was photos, Jim Dwyer or I haven't come across him yet. So
Okay, so there's a plug right there. If anyone has photos, please contact Sterling.
and that was the school on East John Street.
Okay.
So it was there for a few years, and then so I would say it was built about 1883 when the first houses were built for the iron company and the Vulcan store. And then in the 1890s, the John Street or Ward School was constructed on West John Street, the 200 block of West John Street. And that was the John Street School. It was commonly known by everybody here as the John Street School. And that was all grades until about 1908. They did build an addition in 1903 on the John Street School, and I know that when it was becoming overcrowded, so when they were building the addition, this building was vacant at the time, the Newberry News Shop. Of course, it wasn't Newberry News then. It was vacant, so I know they had classrooms in here until the addition was completed in 1903. So in 1908, it was decided to build a 3-story brick school as the high school. So they constructed it on Main Street, and at that time, the people were saying, why were we building a school so far out of town?
Oh.
Because in the early days, to Truman was the end of Newberry, the village limits, and then a little later extended to McMillan Avenue. But at that time, they were wondering why they were building the school so far out of town. But it was a beautiful 3-story brick building constructed by the Foster Construction Company of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And that became the high school, and the elementary and junior high were still at the Ward School or John Street School. And then in 1925, they were kind of considering building another school because the old John Street School was built of wood, and after experiencing the major fire on Newberry Avenue in 1925, they were really concerned about fire. So they decided they wanted to build another school next to the high school on Newberry Avenue. So they purchased the lot, and the cornerstone was laid with a ceremony in I'm thinking either June or July of 1926, and construction commenced, and it was completed in 1927, the current high school that we use today. So they had a cornerstone laying ceremony. They placed a copper box in the cornerstone with newspapers and a list of the Board of Education and some of the faculty and staff. And then so the John Street School became vacant, totally vacant.
So how many kids attended the John Street School? Any idea how many students at the time?
Not off the top of my head. I'd have to look at my records and files, but it just became overcrowded, and they thought it was a fire hazard, so they wanted to build, transitioned into having brick buildings in Newberry rather than wood buildings, because after experiencing several fires that were pretty destructive, they were kind of wanting what they called fireproof buildings.
Right. Take care of the kids.
So, yeah, in 26, so it became the high school. And the elementary and junior high moved into the old high school that was built in 1908, the 3-story brick building. And, of course, the high school, when it was built in 26-27, it was a 3-story brick building as well. Okay. And Avenue A ran in between both of the schools, and there was a tunnel underneath this, and it's still there. And that was to transfer heat from the old high school to the new high school. And also kids used to walk through the tunnel to get from
one building to the next.
Yep.
How big of a tunnel would you say? Wide? How big of a tunnel? Because you've been in the tunnel, right?
I've been through it several times. I'm trying to remember. It's been a good 8 years since I've been down there. Because I've been graduated almost 8 years now. Boy, Steve, I can't remember how wide it is, but I know I had to at least duck just a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So right now, what do they keep in the tunnel? I know this is off topic, but just supplies and things down there?
Well, the tunnel's just the pipe was cut and there's no heat transferred anymore, so there's just nothing.
There's nothing.
It's empty.
Okay.
So in the early 70s, they decided they wanted to build a new elementary and middle school building. So in 72 or 73, they started construction on the new building, and they tore down the 1908 brick school.
Because I've seen some pictures of that. That was a pretty big place.
It was a big place.
Looked very nice. Very nice.
Yeah. The third floor had an auditorium, and then in the basement, I actually have film footage of it. They even had a bowling alley down there, a couple lanes down there. Yeah. Got film footage of it. And there were elm trees all the way around the block of the old high school, and then later the elementary school. There were the elm trees on both sides of the sidewalk. And those, when the Dutch elm disease, they got the Dutch elm disease, so they had to cut them all down.
Took those down. So they tore that down in the early 70s?
The early 70s,
to
yeah.
build the new elementary and middle school.
Yeah, they actually built some of it around the elementary school, and they had to, and then eventually they tore it down. But it took a good, at least a couple weeks to tear it down, because I've got pictures of them taking it down section by section. And then another thing I want to mention is when they decided to build the high school, the current high school, in 1926, they had to move the 3-story Berman house 1 block over to the south, because where the schools are was the Milton Berman farm, and so his house had to be moved over, and then later Dr. Gibson used it as his residence, and that burnt on New Year's Eve of 1938. So I just wanted to mention that they had to move a house before they built the high school.
Okay.
And another thing I want to mention about the high school is in the auditorium there are the murals. They hired the government hired Cray Collins from Grand Rapids. He painted the murals downstate and transported them up here, and that was a WPA or a Depression era project was to have artists who were starving artists to paint murals in public buildings. Like in the post office in Manistee, they have a mural up there that was a Depression era mural. So I wanted to mention that those were installed in 1934. There were supposed to be 6 murals, but he only painted 2.
What about the statue of Abraham Lincoln?
The statue of Abraham Lincoln was donated by the class of 1928.
28.
Yeah. Now, the class of 1927 graduated in the new auditorium, but the class of 28 would have been the first actual class to have went to school in the 1926-27 high school.
I see. So fast forward to, or move to the elementary middle school. The second floor right now is vacant. How long has that been vacant?
Well, I went to middle school there, or in the second floor, and it was a few years after I went into the. It seems like when I would have been a senior, which would have been not 1900, but 2012, 2013. I was a senior, and it seems to me that the middle school moved to the second floor of the high school, and then they kind of closed off the second floor of the middle school.
Okay.
The John Street or Ward School, in 1939, the second floor was skimmed off and rebuilt and became the Newberry Clinic. And then later the old annex.
Okay.
It was on the 200 block of West John.
Okay. That's kind of neat. Make use of the building.
And that was what I read going through archives and different things, is that was another WPA. The Roosevelt's New Deal had these different programs to have unemployed, mostly young men unemployed, and to put them to work. And I know that they are the ones that skimmed off the second floor and rebuilt the old John Street School so it could become the Newberry Clinic.
Want to mention again, if you want to listen to previous podcasts, go to mynewberrynews.com. You can go to Facebook or go to YouTube. We post all of these podcasts there. If you head over to YouTube, make sure that you like the video if you like it, and subscribe to the channel. That way you're always updated as to when new podcast or video content is posted to the channel. So thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We'll do it again next week.
Sounds good.
Thanks for listening.